Okay, so we're going to take a brief look now at just some of the applications of Kantian ethics and utilitarianism to business ethics. Now, we've looked at a lot of these before, so you might see this as a bit of a recap session. Just a very brief note: Kantian ethics. What is it? Remember? Do you? I think I do. Let me tell you, I'm the one doing the writing. I better, you can't actually answer me. So Kantian ethics is deontological in nature. So that means it's about duties, and it's the action itself that matters. And it has two categorical imperatives. The first categorical imperative is the principle of universalization. So if we take I got confused about how to spell universalization just then. If we take a maxim, a rule that we're going to obey, and we say what would happen if everybody obeyed it, if that leads to contradiction, then it's wrong. It's a wrong action. If everybody did it and it would be contradictory or a very bad outcome, it is wrong. If it's not, then it's fine. The second categorical imperative, just going to write second cat there because I'm running out of space, is the principle of autonomy. And that's going to be really important as we apply things. Autonomy, autonomos, self-legislation, the idea that we ought to respect the freedom of choice of every human being. On the other hand, we have utilitarianism, which is a consequentialist theory. So it's consequentialist, which means that it cares about the outcome of an action rather than the inherent worth of the action itself. So it says an action is good or bad in as much as it produces happiness. The outcome being happiness minus pain. So this is the rule that it works on is the principle of utility. Which is whichever the action that is the good one or the best one is the one that produces the most amount of happiness, which is pleasure, minus pain. Okay, we're going to now apply these to a few areas. These are really just some thoughts about how you might apply it. You might have to forgive me, I'll be quite vague as we go through this, because you can, of course, depending upon your view of the different areas, apply these theories in slightly different ways, depending upon your view of the facts, and so on. So let's start with corporate social responsibility. Remember, corporate social responsibility is the idea that a company should be responsible for the stakeholders, for those people that it affects, not just the shareholders, who are the people who own the company. So what might a Kantian say about that? Well, they might say that it's a very good thing indeed. They might say, look, you have to respect autonomy. So it might be that the people who work for the company shouldn't pollute, for instance, because polluting reduces the freedom of choice of everybody else. They shouldn't take over the community. And they certainly shouldn't use slave labor Um, they should respect workers' rights. Why? Because if they don't, then they're breaking kind of the rule of autonomy. Now, a utilitarian might have a slightly different response to this, right? Because they're using a different principle. So they might say, yes, absolutely, there should be corporate responsibility because it produces more happiness. Everybody should be concerned with producing happiness and looking after stakeholders produces more utility or happiness. Rather than just profit. But they might also, you could interpret them in the kind of Milton Friedman kind of way, remember? And you might say, actually, no, the thing that will produce happiness is everybody being allowed to do what they want, uh, and freedom to make profit alone produces kind of more innovation, which is something that John Stuart Mill was very keen on, by the way. So different attitudes there. The next one, whistleblowing. Now, we've covered some of this before, so I'm going to go pretty quickly through this. It'll be a whistle stop tour. I apologize immediately for that terrible joke. Please forgive me. So, how might a Kantian reply? Well, a Kantian might well reply, no, don't whistleblow because it undermines the autonomy uh, of the person committing the crime. Remember, or whistleblowing is telling the government or HR or whoever about wrongdoing in the company. Um, but because we respect autonomy of people, whether they're doing good or bad things, it undermines the autonomy of the wrongdoer. But at the same time, the first categorical imperative says, look, if you universalize lying, it's self-contradictory because you ought to lie becomes universal, and no one believes anything anybody says, including the lies. So at the same time, if you're asked by HR, what's Fred doing, you don't lie. You'll have to tell the truth. A utilitarian would really, this is a hard one. It really depends upon kind of the outcome. So you'd say yes, yes is a good idea. Maybe if the outcome stops more harm than it causes. But bad if it produces more harm. So because it's just about harm, we get some slightly odd results, right? So um, if you're if let's go with polluting again. If a company is polluting and you whistleblow on them, it might shut down the factory, but it will stop the pollution, which in the long term will produce more pleasure than pain, and therefore is a good thing. But if it's, say, tax evasion on a minor scale, or kind of maybe the accountant's just stealing a small amount of money, you might think, well, I could whistleblow, and a Kantian would say maybe you should, or maybe you shouldn't. But let's say you do whistleblow, that accountant loses their job, can't feed their family, the amount they're stealing might be so small that no one notices. So you could see a situation in which you'd actually support something that traditionally we would see as bad. And that's one of the problems with utilitarianism, right? Is it allows us to take rather radical views on these sorts of things. Finally, globalization. So I think, as far as Kantian ethics is concerned, a lot of the effects of globalization would be very bad. So, for instance, kind of the neo-colonialism, so forcing our way of life on others undermines autonomy. Now, if you disagree, if you think it's not neo-colonialism, then that kind of a criticism doesn't really work. Whereas if you're a utilitarian, I think you would look primarily at the benefits. So it produces more wealth. And it also reduces absolute poverty. And those sorts of things are just much more happiness making than undermining autonomy is pain making. And so you would say, as a utilitarian, probably that globalization is a good thing. Okay, so those are some examples of applications of both Kantian ethics and utilitarianism to business ethics.